It's all change at the checkout. From suburban London to Turkey, from the American Midwest to South Africa, the effects of economic crisis and environmental disaster are now being felt by consumers everywhere. In the drive to save, shoppers are trading down, forcing manufacturers to fundamentally reconsider their operations. Meanwhile, policymakers worry that bad weather and increasing demand could see a return of a crisis in food supply. Are we at a turning point for some of our most basic industries? Hello and welcome back to Analysis Review. With me to discuss the profound changes in consumer goods and a potential food crisis are here in London, Louise Lucas, the FT's consumer goods editor, and from New York down the line, Greg Meyer, our commodities markets reporter there. Welcome to both of you. Louise, could we just give us a quick sense of what is going on and why?
Well, the thing is, people have got less money. Whether you're in Greece, UK or the US, people are worried about losing their jobs. There's pressure on disposable income. And by the way, it's not just the developed world. In emerging markets as well, we're seeing slower economic growth, and we're also seeing things like food inflation, which matters an awful lot more when up to half your household spending is going on food, which is clearly a lot more than it is here.
So just give us a very quick sense of how this is showing itself. I mean, we're hearing stuff that manufacturers are making smaller packages.
This sort of small packages you'd have previously seen in emerging markets in India and Eastern Europe are now coming here. Boxes of 40 tea bags, deodorants you can just use a dozen times. All these sort of things are now coming here because you know what? People don't have the money to buy the big stuff. They want to just have their £50 that they spend or £20 and that is it.
So how serious is this for the companies themselves? I mean, obviously, is this going to put pressure on margins?
Companies are adapting in ways they've never done before. I mean, they're having to cut costs themselves, but what they're trying to do is ensure they can still sell things that people want, hence going down for smaller sizes.
Bring you in, Greg, from New York. I mean, how much of this is, Louise has mentioned the effects of economic crisis, but there's also been this other big story we've been covering, you've been covering for some time now, about what's been going on in the commodities scene, and how is that feeding through to the checkout, if you like to put it glibly?
Well, yeah, it's a huge, the food story, the food commodity story is a huge story, and it will have an impact at the supermarket checkout, at groceries, although it will take time for that impact to be felt.
Is there any way of measuring
here
that?
In the US, we've had the hottest July on record. We've had a drought that is as bad as droughts we've seen in the 80s, the 50s, and even the Dust Bowl years of the 1930s. That's sharply reduced the expectations for the size of the crop, the corn crop here, the soybean crop here. The US is the largest grower and exporter of corn, was the biggest for soybeans until this year, and looks like they'll be surpassed by Brazil because of the drought. You've seen commodity prices shoot up just since June. Corn's up 50%, soybeans up 30%, and eventually that's going to translate into higher prices for retail food consumers.
Has anyone measured, I mean, can from either of you, can anyone, I mean, start with you, Greg, has anyone actually measured, X rise in corn prices leads to Y increase at the till?
There are estimates of that, and it's easy to get alarmed by just skyrocketing prices if you look at the commodity futures markets, which are extremely volatile. But the Economic Research Service of the Department of Agriculture here generally estimates a 50% rise in prices at the farm translates into a less than 1% rise in retail or in food consumer prices.
I guess the thing is, if you are a shopper, you are actually going to see this much quicker, because although these are corn and things we don't much think about, that's going straight into the pigs that are creating our bacon, the hogs, meat. So it is sort of pushing meat prices up, and this is a thing that is increasingly a luxury.
Right. So, Greg, just finally on the commodities, we've been told to expect many things recently, but do you see, are higher prices here to stay?
That's a good question. We have seen steadily rising prices for food, but not necessarily the magnitude we've seen in commodity markets. Agriculture is a seasonal and annual market. The U.S. is having a terrible year, but Brazil just had its best corn crop ever. And there's expectations that farmers there will plant even more. So, I mean, I think it's fair to say there will be elevated food commodity prices for years to come, as there have been for the past few years. They won't necessarily be of the magnitude that we've seen this year in terms of the increases.
There is definitely a structural point, though, in that the population is expanding hugely.
Yeah.
There are going to be more mouths to feed, and therefore I think we are going to see a sort of structural pressure on what we produce, and therefore not, as you say, like this huge thing with the droughts, but we are in a sort of incline.
So what does this mean now for the industry, for the companies longer term, if what you've described, if both of you, that we're heading into this, or we are already in this new...
It means, well, I was talking to a chief executive of a company yesterday, and he said, this is the world we're in, it's here to stay, we've just got to get a hell of a lot better at doing what we do. People, there is still an affluent part that are spending more, and in fact, even in the most cash strapped areas, people are trading up, premiumising. So this is what companies are doing. They're making smarter, better things, face creams that do 20 things at once, healthy drinks that are good for you as well as everything else. And then they're producing these, boxes of 40 tea bags.
So lots of scope for innovation there. Louise Lucas, thank you very much. Greg Meyer from New York, thank you as well. And thank you for watching. To read more about this subject and other stories covered by the FT's analysis team, please go to ft.com/analysis. Until the next time, goodbye.